like to call to order the Committee of the Whole for November 19th, 2024 at 5:38 p.m. Attendance roll call.
Alderpersons Wolf.
Here.
Hamel is absent. Decker.
Here.
Schwer.
Here.
Schrader.
Here.
Kubaki.
Here.
Madden.
Here.
We have a quorum present.
Thank you. Statement of public notice.
This meeting was noticed in accordance with the open meeting law on Friday, November 15th, 2024.
Thank you. Approval of the agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? That passes. New business, discussion of rec charges. Scott. So as Scott's getting this ready, this conversation tonight's multifaceted. So we're going to start, we brought in our historians and people that know all the background. So Scott Kozlowski is here to answer questions, but he's going to start with almost as far back as you guys want, but starting with sewer wars and how we connected to MMSD and how our charges are based and our connection fees. And we're going to go into, eventually end up to where we are today and how we charge specifically businesses for this and the impact on how it has on businesses and how we collect that data. So.
All right, so we're going to first start with the history. So I'm going to give this over to Ken Ward here, and we'll kind of go through a little history, and I got your slides all set up for you. So
Ken's with R&M.
Yeah, I'm with Rickert and Milky. I was working with the city back in beginning in 1984. So two things: you got one, a really old guy, and two, there's nothing more exciting than talking about sewers. So just to give you a little bit of background, Muskego was not always connected to MMSD. They had their own treatment plant for a long time. MMSD was also servicing a lot of communities that were out in the suburban areas. And during the times when they were serving them, there was some discussion as how are they going to charge them. And the sewage district wanted to charge based on, if they could, as opposed to base it on usage, they were going to base it upon property values. And the original 8 communities that were part of the sewer wars back then, Muskego was not one of them necessarily when it started out. But as time went on, from 84 to I think it was 92, 94, we said, Scott, is when sewer wars were finally resolved. The final item was that you were going to wind up paying based upon some property values that you had, whether it was fair or not. So when that occurred, then you had a connection to MMSD that occurred in January of 1985. So everything that you had in your plant and your treatment and your pipes then became connected to MMSD. All the downstream improvements that you hear from MMSD, things like interceptors, deep tunnels, and all that, that comes through your charges from MMSD, which is also part of the charges that your people pay. So that comes in really for your O&M, maintenance of sewer system, your consumption charge, the first thing that's up on that slide. So that's the payment that people make monthly. I don't even know how often you do quarterly, all right, when you do yours. That's the consumption charge, and that's for their average daily use of the system. And that's also for what it goes down into MMSD is treated by MMSD. You also have a connection fee. That's part of your charge, and that is a flat fee charged each lateral, and that's for inflow and infiltration throughout the system. And that flat fee can be revised as time goes on, depending upon if there's a difference in any of the flow characteristics for I&I. But generally, those are the two things that people normally pay when they see their sewer bill. That's different than a reserve capacity assessment. The reserve capacity assessment was brought online in 1985. And the reasoning behind it is everybody is based upon having some usage of the system. And we have to pay for downstream capital costs. So things that you might be more aware of would be like the McShane lift station. Very large lift station, a couple of large diameter pipes that go in towards MMSD. All right, that's a conveyance facility. So in order to pay for that, you can't just put that on your charges that go on your consumption charge, because the time for you to pay off that loan is going to be sooner than you're going to be able to recoup enough money. And so then you're going to have really high charges for your sanitary sewer. So instead, the reserve capacity assessment was instituted, and you're not the only community in the area that has it. There's several others that do have it. But that reserve capacity assessment then takes a look at what the total dollar value is of downstream facilities, such as interceptors that are within the city, lift stations, holding facilities for overflow purposes, such as your storage facility that you have, and then taking that and dividing that into what we believe would, back then, now remember we're doing this in 1984, 85, back then, trying to plan out the system for the next 50 years and what we think those costs would be. We then have people that were connected to the system before January 1, 1985, and they have a flat rate that they pay. And then we have people that were connected after that time. And the reason that the people that were connected after January 1, 1985 pay more money and have a increase in value that goes up every year by $132. The reason for that increase in value is because there were going to be more facilities built that they're going to pay into that are more tributary to their specific use as time goes on. All right, so outlying areas or new subdivisions, you already had service as of, January 1, 1985, and you existed, so you had already been paying into the facilities that were in existence at that time. Now we have brand new facilities to get us into MMSD, and that's where the RCA came in. Does that make sense to people? If you have any questions, feel free to ask at any time, because it's old way of doing things, but it is how a lot of places do it. And you do the same thing on the water side, right? So now your reserve capacity assessment, I said, instituted in 1984. It's how you collect your downstream improvement costs, all right? It's based on peak usage. So we reserve the capacity in the system for that particular user from day one, forever and a day. All right, so that capacity is there. So if you're a single family residence, or if you're a large scale business that sends a lot of water down the pipes, you are reserved for the peak day usage. So let's just take, I'm going to grab a car wash. All right, just give you an example. Our car wash, we're going to say, gets charged 10 RCAs. And the reason is they may, at some time in March, peak usage. All right, the snow melts, salt comes up, everybody goes get their car washed, and they process 100 cars a day. And they do that for 30 days, and they are at a very, very high use. Otherwise, the rest of the year, that car wash does maybe 5, 10 cars a day. But we had to build the system large enough to reserve it for that 100 cars a day. And when they pay in on their RCA charge, they're paying for that reserve capacity that they're going to use someday. And the same thing goes for an industrial building, a church based on number of seats, a restaurant, right? And so we have a restaurant that has indoor seating, outdoor seating, and maybe they have 150 seats. And that charges them based on how many seats they have in that restaurant. Whether they're all occupied or not doesn't matter. But on the day that they need that maximum day, all right, they're having a huge event or whatever they're doing, it's there for them. And that's where the RCA comes in. All right. It's all then based upon what a typical residential equivalent unit is. So a single family residence, 1 unit, and that's what all the charges are based on. Now, that could change on the flow out of a single family residence every year. Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewage District actually issues something called a cost recovery manual every year. And that takes a look at all the water usage in the area year after year after year. And uniquely, water usage has been going down year after year after year. And that's partially due to what we call involuntary conservation. If you put in a brand new toilet now, it flushes at 1.6 gallons instead of maybe 3 or 4 if you had an older residence. So the reasoning is it goes down as time goes on. Within your ordinance for residential equivalent units, you have a certain flow value that's assigned to that. And then you also have, if you have a restaurant or if you have a multifamily, so for example, an apartment building with 20 units in it, you will pay a portion based upon the size of the number of bedrooms and the number of units. When we set that system up, we were conservative in what we did. And the best way to put that is, if we said a 10-unit apartment building is, and I can't remember what the number is offhand, and maybe Scott, you know it. 0.75. What is it?
0.75 for 2, 0.5 for 1.
Yeah, 0.5 for 1. Yeah, 0.75 for a 2-bedroom and 0.1 or 0.5 for 1. So let's just say a 10-unit building, all single family or one bedroom. Then you're going to wind up going 0.5 times that and get your recs. Even if we took today's lower flow coefficient per use per person, it used to be up at 67, 68 gallons per capita per day. Now it's down to 53. Even if we do that, multiply it out on the occupancy factor, what a single or a 1-bedroom unit would be for a 10-unit building, we still are charging less on the rec than MMSD would be telling you to do. All right, so as the test of time from 1984, even though that chart has changed several times, it's had some modifications to it, it's still very accurate for the usage that you have today. So you've kind of kept up with the times, if you will. All right. So when we take a look then at every connection that somebody has, if you have a connection to the sewer system, you get 1 rec. That lateral is worth 1 rec at a minimum. If you're a commercial or an industrial type usage, then we go back to the chart and we see how many recs that you have. And I'm going to give you, sometimes it's based upon employee count. So if you had 10 employees, you usually figure 2.3 gallons per employee hour. I told you sewers would be exciting at some point here. All right, but 2.3 gallons per employee hour over an 8-hour day, you come up with a flow factor. It's still less than what you charge for your RCA and rec for 10 employees or less. So your charting is still working. In a nutshell, this is a little bit different than what you see on your monthly charge, but that RCA, that's based on a residential equivalent unit, pays for your overall system improvements and your downstream improvements. So sometimes you'll take a look at it and you'll get somebody that'll come in and say, look, I'm just going to wind up having 20 employees max someday, but right now I only have 5. Why am I paying 2 recs? All right, 2 RCA charges to start my business up because I only have 5 and that's below the 10. The answer is we have to reserve that capacity in the system for you when you finally get up to 20. Now, I can't recall, and Scott, you're going to have to help with this one, but now you have a business, you vacate that business. And as you vacate that business and your 20 employees go away with you, brand new business come in and we have 30 employees. So when somebody does an occupancy permit, is it possible to get charged with another RCA? Yep. And the reason for that is because they've gone up. So that you have an accounting system. You have a lot of records that go back over history of what somebody paid. And if that use changes, then they would pay more. A restaurant does an addition. All right. A car wash that was a single car quick trip, you can only get one through every 7 or 8 minutes, now turns into a coast car wash with 17 bays. And all of a sudden you get 17 going through, you're going to have a change in use, and then your RCAs may change at that point, and they may have to have another charge that comes to them.
So what happens in the inverse? Say I own a car wash and I convert it to an office building. So I had 20 recs I bought because it's a high-use car wash, and now I'm turning into an office building where I'm going to have my 10 employees, where I only need 2. Do I get the money back?
No, you don't. All right. And the reason that you don't get it back is because the reverse could occur. All right. We could go back. We already built the system for the capacity of that car wash. And so just as that change, the use could change over time, it can change back. All right. Now, my best story on this is somewhat personal to me. Ruckert and Milke built an office building. Bill Milke, I was the city of Pewaukee also has the RCA charge, and I was in charge of the RCA charges, and I told him, you need to pay 7 RCAs for your building. And he argued with me that, no, we can't do that. He goes, you work here, you got to tell, you can't do that. And I said, yes, but if the use of this building, because based on the square footage, ever changes, you're going to have to pay it at that point to whoever you sell to. So you have to pay it now on the front end. And if I could get it by him back then, I think, it should work. But the answer is, yeah, you don't get it to refund.
So I'm going to keep throwing softballs to you. So it went from a car wash that had 20 down to a office building that needed 2. If that office does expand now and say it needs an additional 5, those 20 have already been bought, so those 5 don't need to be purchased anymore, correct? You don't need to buy anymore until it goes up.
Basically, the property will still have 13 in the bank.
So the recs stay with the property, they don't stay with the business. So if the use of that building, whatever they were at that peak time is where the number is.
Correct, it runs with the property.
Correct. Make sense?
Yep.
Correct.
And that's a one-time charge, or is it?
Correct.
Okay,
You can pre-buy them, which is going a little bit outside, so
okay.
the rec fees.
One-time charge unless they expand their business.
Correct, yeah. So it's a one-time charge for what you're doing, but then as you grow or
If you
expand or
grow.
change the use, it gets reevaluated, and then we look at, okay, you had bought, say, 1, and now you should have 5. You have to pay the 4 when we do that reevaluation of it.
And
And,
that's why.
and for my real estate mind, is this just it's like for, like with a condo, like a reserve for replacement type of thing? The rec is,
It stays
of
with the
in there,
property. It's like
right.
an asset.
right, but on their end, it's like you're holding it in reserve to replace and repair things down the road? Is that kind of what you use it for?
It's actually for the original construction of larger facilities that you have. So you should have, cooked within your rates, is a replacement fund. And so that goes for that would be on your monthly sewer charges for your operation and maintenance. So that goes back to the consumptive charge.
Okay,
What they did is they planned for it. So it's already there, you can't take it away.
Now, the cost of them go up annually, however. So, like when I was an alderman a long time ago, I think a rec cost was about $3,800. Now they're about $6,000 because they go up, it's about 135 a year. So they keep on going up to stay up with inflation and everything else.
so you could buy them? You could buy them ahead of time?
You can buy them
Knowing
ahead of
that-
time. Correct.
Okay.
So why we're leading into the next part, and for example, where thing that we want to talk about next is so what you see here, and you guys got, is our survey. We have multiple different types of surveys. So one of the things that we have, that how we check this is per section 290-7 parentheses 4 of our municipal code, the city shall conduct an annual review of sewer systems users. Verification will be made that properties have adequate RECs purchase. Each sewer system user must have purchased enough RECs to cover their peak capacity, based upon the underlying assumption that the city must reserve sufficient capacity in the system for such flows. Okay, so this is where we're going to get into that spreadsheet. We, utility clerk, sends out these surveys on an annual basis. They return them, the businesses. It's getting a little tougher for them to return these things. We have to maybe send them twice or 3 times. Based off of these, we generated who owes RECs. Do you understand? Now we're talking about an expansion, maybe a car wash, some of these that we have not done. So,
Scott?
Yep.
When they come in to expand their business, they're getting a permit, so that would be a signal point, wouldn't it?
Correct. So again, logical. No, exactly right. So this, every year, we send these survey out to all the businesses, okay? But this is where the logic starts coming in. And it's kind of like that logic, like you said, okay? So if you look at this, one of the good ones that we can look at, right here, Muskego Biotech Building, okay? Back in 2023, it just opened up, okay? So not many employees. We sent out a survey to them, and based off of their survey, they needed 3 recs. They have 1 already, so they need to purchase 2 recs. Does that make sense? Logic going through it. Another one, Hill and Hill Bar LLC. That is the local. So in the last, and this is from dates 2020 to 2024. The local, it used to be just a bar. Now it became more of a restaurant/bar. They added more seats. Based on them adding more seats, they owe 0.25 recs. We need to get them another 0.25 recs. Okay? Is that everyone kind of following our logic here? Okay? So what has happened is, why we're sharing this with you, these are the companies that we need to send bills out from basically doing better or increasing or changing what they do from 2020 to 2024. Some are in 2020, some are in 24, some are in 23. Okay, does that make sense? But why we wanted to let you know is, it's a pretty big bill, 704, okay? And some of these, more on the bottom, which are car washes, which we talked about, are going to maybe have a little heartburn with this, okay? Now, here's another thing with car washes, all right? You can file and get through MMSD a discount, okay? Car washes are getting smarter and smarter. They're reusing the water, okay? So there's a couple of them that have a discount, but the ones that don't, like Quick Trip and GPM, they need to go do a discount with MMSD for the water usage, okay? And if they do get that, their rec could be tremendously reduced. And even there's a couple car washes that do have this, they should go apply again, because I'm sure technology has changed and MMSD probably has a better way to do it. Okay. Anyone understand kind of where we're at right now?
Is that just a single revenue number on the bottom for the next coming year? Or you said that's 2022, 23, 24?
No, this is just one-time fee that everyone would pay. And our ordinance says you have 5 years to pay for it.
5 years, okay.
At 8% interest, okay? Now, not all these occurred like in 24. Some of these are a little bit older. They're in 2020.
So some of these are already paid.
No, they haven't paid.
Okay.
These have not.
These have not.
There's
These are
lots
the ones that we
been.
found that
These are
have
the
not
ones that
paid.
are outstanding.
Okay, have they been billed?
No,
Not yet.
not yet. Nothing has been billed yet.
How come they haven't been billed?
Okay, so we have now had a utility clerk that retired in 2020, who was here for long term, and we have gone through 3 more, and this is not the easiest thing for people to understand. So it's gotten to that point of reviewing all this to make sure we had this right before it went out.
So annually, the surveys did go out
Correct.
throughout of them. When
On
Scott,
the surveys, it explains this? You have an
it does.
Yes, it does.
But,
And they can call us at any time, and we can always do this.
but as a matter of practice, and I was a small business owner here back in '96, and I remember getting mine. Small business owner, you get something, and you know when you fill it out, you're going to owe money. How quickly do you return that back? You don't. And it would get to the point when Renee was here that she literally, after like the 4th or 5th try, and tried calling, would get in her car and go knock on the door of the business and say, here, can you please fill this out? And I remember her calling me, at least when I was there. At least she got me to do it over the phone, explaining that you just need to fill it out. You're probably not going to owe any money. So then I filled it out, but you don't know that. So I guess what I'm getting at is, yes, we've been billing it, but we've had 4 new utility clerks that have taken, getting up the ramp of learning their, how to just do your billing and everything else, that the follow-up as far as chasing doors down and everything else has not occurred, and nor, as we'll get to it, should it occur. Because one of the things we're going to talk about later on is putting more teeth into our ordinances by requiring places to actually fill this out. But where we are right now on this, is you look, some of these numbers are manageable, but there's one of these car washes in here that kind of falls into a unique situation. I'm not going to name them on here because we're public on here, but they bought a car wash from the bank. So you do a title search, you can relate this, you do a title search, what bills are outstanding, anything like taxes and all that would show up in a title search. Well, nothing
Was billed.
won't show up in a title search because the previous owner that went bankrupt never filled out the forms. They buy it, they fill out the form now, and it's a small business, small family that owns it, and now they got a $100,000 bill on there. Not saying that we should forgive this, but I think we need to kind of look at how we're going to approach this.
Well, the other thing, you said they got 5 years to pay.
Seems like we're out of luck on
Is
that.
Is that from the point of when the new survey goes? Would they have 5
I would
years?
say
Or
it's
is this?
5 years from when we tell them they
Well,
owe.
wait, it's 5 years from when the bill, I think when the bill goes
But
out.
we can, you as council can change, adapt, whatever you want to do on this. And that's why this is here tonight, because there's different things you could look at on this and how to approach this. One of the things you could look at is, okay, what year did one of these car washes actually owe the money? Remember I said it goes up $130 a year or whatever? Okay, let's figure out that this should have been billed under the previous owner that went bankrupt, and it should have been paid and billed back then, and their bill might be down $2,500 less. That's something we can research and find out.
Well, according to his explanation, it's a dated thing, so that would make logic.
Yeah, so we could figure out that. So right now, these dollars that are in here are based on the current charges for the recs, which I think that's one easy thing that we could do to, help some of these businesses. And some of these are actually, most of these are fairly current. So they're not a lot of them that are really old. There's a couple of them that would impact. The other thing you could look at, if you want, is instead of 5 years, you could spread that out farther. Instead of the 8% interest that we charge, you could charge 0% for a certain amount of time. I mean, there's all kinds of things you can do on this, or we can just go forward with our policy. None of this is all beyond my pay grade that I want everyone to I have no recommendation on this besides pointing out as a former small business owner, this would impact me all at once. So I think we need to have a heart and kind of look at it from that lens. So that's why where we're here.
So is this money's coming back to the city? Is this some of this going to MSD?
It goes to the sewer utility.
So any of that going to MMSD?
Well, we pay our MMSD bill every year, yes. So
have we been
annually-
losing money on that side because of this?
No, we're not losing it because of it. This money all goes into a fund, which I'm not recommending forgiving any of this, so that fund will still be made whole. So that money goes into a fund. Our MMSD charges annually are about $3.2 million. 78% of that is paid through user fees. 22% of it is paid for by reserve capacity money we have in the bank already on that, which is, going off the top of my head, it's like $14 million we have sitting there.
Which is all governed. I mean, we have to have a percentage, right?
Yeah, right. So no, there's not a loss of money in this or anything going on this right now. Yeah, if we were to say we're not going to collect the $704,000, which no one's saying, that would be, I think, a mistake because that would come to hurt us down the line. But I think how we collect it is, you've got some options.
I have a question about the one that went bankrupt. So they didn't have to buy their credits when they started the business?
So when we start a business with a car wash, we start them with one, they buy one out of the door.
Uh-huh.
And then the following year, our policy states they buy one, and then the following year we evaluate them.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And they did have not
some.
just one, they had some. They had a
So
good
this
amount.
it was a car wash that went to a car wash.
Yeah, it was
Okay.
21,
Well,
25.
that makes it easier.
They had
Yeah.
21.
They had like 20 of them.
Yeah.
But now that same car wash owes like 35.
They've increased their business.
Yeah.
Right.
But what I'm saying is, when the guy foreclosed, why didn't we know about that then?
As far as, well, because it's based on the service. So when they closed, they may have only had I don't know where the number was at that point, but they had bought 20. So they were above the one.
Mm-hmm.
So they bought the 20. They may have still been at the 20. They may have been maybe they owed 25, but it's not since the survey wasn't registered back to the city, because the last thing you're doing when you're going out of business is filling out government paperwork for something like this, that number never shows up on a title report. Had it been filled out and been assessed, when the title company calls, we would have said, yep, this money's owed, and it would have been part of the sale. But if it doesn't get back to us, we don't know it's owed.
So
Well, there's
moving
got to be a
forward,
better way of tracking this than
Moving
just
forward,
having
the
people
permits.
on their honor filling these things out. then.
Well, that's what we're talking about we will be talking about putting this into an ordinance where they can get a citation for not filling it out. Right now, there's nothing. But there should be, I agree.
well, it's got
But regardless, they're on their honor to fill it out honestly.
You're right.
So,
But there should be, I mean, there's got to be something in place to make them at least fill it out, because right now it's, can you fill it out? Can you fill it out? Can you please fill it out?
So if we make it an ordinance, they have to fill it out. So we can make it an official document to send, that they have to fill out.
We have the ordinance already.
The
We
ordinance just
gonna put-
doesn't have a penalty for not filling it out, which is what Jeff
So
and
we
I are
need to
recommending.
put that right on the form.
Oh, yeah. And the other, I mean, they have a form. I mean, we've changed things internally a couple of years ago as these things, people come in for their permits and everything else, it is spelt out to them that this is happening. It's not getting buried in the paperwork, and it's not.
So are they
something that's
returning the survey at the time of permit, or we're not doing that? So
because they
that'll
don't
be,
know yet.
so that'll be a point that we'll start doing. We won't accept the permit until we have all the paperwork in.
Well, but even if they do, our policy states they start at 1, because we don't know what their home
Right,
usage
right.
is going to be till a year later. So you can't hold the permit up for a year because they can't operate without the permit.
But I mean,
It's a
we
chicken
can
or
make it
egg.
mandatory that the paperwork comes in the first year with this.
That they do, yeah.
That they do that,
They
okay.
pay their
Yeah,
rec
so-
and everything. Yeah,
okay,
that
okay,
happens,
okay.
yes.
Yeah, everyone, just remember, this is just one little thing. Everyone who has built anything for a single or commercial has paid a rec to get
Yes.
hooked up, okay? There is no one who hasn't paid one. It's just this little thing.
That growth factor
That growth factor of monitoring that thing. If you come in the last, ever since, single family home, you get charged your rec. You pay for your rec right away. A commercial building, you pay for it right away. Otherwise, you don't get your meter, so.
So if I understood,
Ken?
Ken.
now you lost my thought. I'll think about it. I have to
Okay,
think about it.
but-
No, the idea would be on this ordinance, so if a person doesn't fill this out, we would issue them some kind of municipal citation, get them here in court. My dealings with them, negotiations would be pretty much fill this out. I'm not looking for a penalty from you, but get it filled out and get it turned in, and that way we'd be able to at least get this stuff filled. So that's the idea behind the ordinance. That doesn't solve what you're dealing with here, but that's for future.
Right. No, my thought was that he said that some communities did not have this. So what do they do instead?
So now we're getting to, some do impact fees, but then you gotta think of it. And I'm guessing Jeff might step in. You don't want two systems.
No, you
Do you know
don't.
what I mean? Like, we kind of committed to this,
Okay.
the Muskego.
That's
So
fine,
we're,
yeah.
we're kind of, we're
That's
in
what he
it.
says. So-
You can't undo this one. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't like this system, quite honestly, but it's the one we have.
So, big thing, we had this bills, and we need, I guess, finance is looking for some direction, so.
So I
You're
guess
gonna set
let's work through this. First of all, do you guys favor at least looking at when this money was due and charging that rec number at least versus what it would be today?
yes.
All right, so we're good with that. Next, are you guys okay with maybe, right now, the 5-year 8% is the policy, either extending the length of time for over, maybe we put a threshold on it, like if it's owed over a certain dollar amount or any of them, instead of going 5 years, they get 10 years on it. And then the other thing to look at would be the interest rate, which has always been 8%. Today's 8% really isn't the worst because interest rates are a whole lot farther, but that 8% was also 8% when interest rates were 2%. So, I mean, and it's just an arbitrary number that's put in there. So I guess I would say I guess I'd like to talk to Sharon a little bit on this, but I would think it's probably easiest to track literally at 0% on something like this because you're not tracking different interest rates on all of them. But I'm not advocating one way or the other. I'm just presenting options to you guys.
Well, there's a cost to doing the business, right?
Yes.
You know, I don't know what that would be. And then the only other question I have is, if we've been not on top of this, I guess would be the word, 100%, and then to throw a bill on a guy and say, we want 8% this year from you on top of that, and here it is, because you owe it to us, to have maybe a grace period of a 1-year grace period to introduce this at no
And
percent at all.
technically, they do get a year on
Yeah.
it because they have till like a year, till next November. Say if we send them out today, next November is when it would go on
Correct.
the tax bill, and it doesn't start collecting interest until it goes on the tax bill.
Oh, okay.
So they really do have a year of no interest already.
Okay.
You almost have to have a fixed interest rate. It'd be a nightmare to do anything
Oh,
other
you-
than that. And I don't have any objection to 8%, but I'd like to see it stretched out to 10 years. 10 years seems to be a favorable period of time, and I know a lot of special assessments in cities are out to 10 years. But the first thing we have to do is strengthen our ordinance, and because businesses have been remiss in not filling this out. So it's not, it's not entirely on the city, it's on the business as well.
Who's roll, can you roll down to the top part of that? And see what the dollars are? Because the only question I have is, if you take $1,600 and knock that out for 10 years, I mean, maybe we should have a threshold and a lower, under 5,000, or under 3,000, it's this many years, and over that, it's 10 years.
It's a good idea.
Because, then you're looking at 160, and if they start putting more on, I mean, I don't know. I know it's probably, it's not as clean to have a dual system, but
I would, if you're going to do that, I would say use $5,000 as your threshold.
Yep, it's a good idea.
I can give you a suggestion on that, what other committees might do.
Sure. Yes, please.
Rather than set it by a dollar value, which is going to be something different 5 years from now, set it by the number of recs that are outstanding.
Oh,
All right,
Sure.
so if somebody has one or greater
Say
than
one.
2 recs outstanding, then they can go to the 10-year time frame. That just makes it a little bit simpler, and then you're not changing your ordinance every few years, similar to keeping the 8%.
and 5,000 versus 6,000.
yeah. So if you do it at one rec, it would be essentially $6,000. So anything below one rec, they have to pay it. Anything above that, they can get time.
Well, I don't know if you want to do it's 6,000 for,
Right there, one rec
For
right
1
now
year.
is $6,495 is one rec for 2024. It goes up in 2025, another $135.
yeah, so in 10 years, it'll be 7,500 or whatever, but yeah. I was looking at dollar values only for time, so I mean, if you owe $6,000 and you have to come up with that in 1 year, I don't know how big the business is.
It's automatically 5 years.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
automatically, everyone does 5 years.
Got it. So then we'll do anything over above that, it'll be up to 10
Would be
years.
10. Yeah.
Just because.
It looks like most people are under 50,000 in between there.
It's really the car washes are the big hitters, and I think there is a nail place because they're big consumers too of water. If you're using a lot of water, you're using a lot of sewage. So
We want to go 10 years out, or we want to go 8 years, or is 10 years good?
I think 5 for one rec and
10 for.
10 for multiple. Yeah.
And 10 for the rest?
all right. You guys good with that? We'll
Yes.
create an ordinance and bring it back for your approval.
And then what's the penalty if,
Well, we'll make a recommendation in the ordinance for so much per day.
okay,
Type of thing.
if they don't pay it
Yeah.
by the,
Usually it's like $124 per day if I were to have to try the case and they don't pay it. Those are some big numbers. Usually when somebody then comes through with it and gives this to me right away, we just hit them with a 1-day fine of $120. That's how we do a lot of things. It doesn't have to be that way, but
And it depends on how much staff time. So
Right.
we've got some frequent flyers that, like for property issues. If we spend a lot of staff time on it, they get charged up to we've got one that has hundreds of thousands of dollars of liens on their house. But typically we look at the staff time and recover all of our staff time of going back and forth with these people. If it's, okay, we issued the citation, they come running in here and fill out the form, then it's the 1-day thing.
So that's just to do the survey. We're talking for the
To
citation.
to fill that out and get the information.
And the rest of this money goes right on the tax bill.
Correct, yes,
So then if they don't pay that, then there's a lien against the property.
correct.
Okay.
Yes. All right.
One other thing, moving forward, we'll probably never do this meeting again. But we're still charging Rex, just to let everyone know. Is this more to show where we are? But what I was talking with the mayor that we could do is every year when they come out, we might have a list that he would say, these 5 companies owe this much in additional rec charges. So that you guys are at least aware of what's going on.
So we'll probably put that list to Public Works and Utilities Committee, just as an informational thing every year as we do our surveys. And so you know which businesses are growing and which ones aren't.
And then the survey, the other thing, the survey will have a due date on it.
A what?
A due date, so you have like
Yes.
30
Oh,
days
yeah.
from
Yes.
the,
Yeah.
30 days from when it's issued or something?
Correct. And then the other thing is when even when we have this ordinance done with a penalty on it, we're not going to send a violation out. We're after the first letter. We'll treat it like we do other things. You'll probably get two letters, and after the second one, we'll say, if you don't fill this out, there's a possibility of getting a citation. You know, we try being reasonable, but we need something because we have nothing right now to go after the people. Okay?
Yep.
All right.
Good.
Find my agenda. No, here it is. Communications miscellaneous business. Motion to adjourn would be in order.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting holds adjourned at 6:20.